Hello everyone, and welcome back to the CodeIgniter series. In the last video, we went ahead and created our first model view and controller. You're probably beginning to see how great CodeIgniter can be, but before we go ahead and finish the model view and controller, I want to go ahead and go into something called Active Record. I went over this a little bit in the last video. An active record has to do with the database queries. And it's how CodeIgniter handles these different queries. So instead of just running a query every single time, we can make things a lot cleaner and a lot easier to set up. So let's go ahead and go to CodeIgniter.com. When we get there, let's go to Read the User Guide. When you get there, go to Table of Contents, and on the right-hand side towards the top, there's Database Class. Next, you want to click on Active Record Class. So you can't just do a regular query within CodeIgniter, and in fact, you can just do a standard PHP command. But since we're going to use CodeIgniter, let's take advantage of everything that it has to offer for us. I'm going to show you some of the typical commands that you'd be doing, and then I'm going to show you how to actually run a query, because sometimes it's better to just run a query instead of Active Record. So if we look at selecting data, you can literally just type in this db get and then the table name, and it will grab everything from the table. I'm going to go ahead and open up my text editor. You can see from the last lesson we have this db get and it's empty. The reason why is because we did all of our selectors in the line above it. I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you can do a selector. So let's comment out what we have now. So what we could do is we could do each selector on a different line. So we could say this db select star, and we could leave that star empty instead. Then we could say this db from posts. Then we would do where. And in case you want to do multiple items in the where, you would just make that an array. Let me show you an example of that. So you can see these two examples are the same, but if you're just doing one item, you don't need to put it in an array. It's just kind of a preference. Maybe you want it so active does not equal 1. You would just add it like this. But you can also change it so it's not equals. You could change it to greater or equal to, or you could even put in an equal sign if you wanted. Then we can add the order by, and then we can add the limit as well. So as you see here, we have this on multiple lines. It does the same thing as what we did in the last video. Essentially what you're doing is you're preparing your select statement before you actually run it. Everything that we're doing before this db get is just preparing it, the query. As soon as we add this db get, it's going to grab every selector that we did prior to that. So the question is, why would you do this on multiple lines instead of just one line? As a personal preference, you might like how it reads better. Or if you're not using PHP 5, you can't do it on one line. But if you're using PHP 4, you really need to upgrade that. So these are the typical things that you would do, but what if you want to do a join? If we go back to the CodeIgniter user guide, we have an example of a join. So it's very simple. All we do is this db join. Then we're going to put the similarity together, and then you have an option to do a left join, right join, or whatever type of join you want to do. Good example of this would be we have a user ID on every post. Maybe we want to grab the name of that user. So do this db join. We want to join the users table. Users.userid equals post.userid. You're pretty familiar with this on how to do joins in SQL. Then I'm just going to go ahead and do left join. So if we went ahead and ran this, it would work as long as we have that users table, which we don't yet. So I'm going to go ahead and comment this out. We can also do a get where, and that does everything all at once. That's just if you have a very simple selector. So we do this db get where, then we put the name of the table, and then we're going to put the where selector, and we put that inside of an array. Then we're going to do our limit. So if we did this, it's even quicker than what we did before. So the only thing it's not doing is it's not ordering everything. If we were to just paste this line above it, then it would work. So that's the basics of selecting data. What would we do to insert a post? I made a function called insert post, and I'm grabbing data. One of my favorite things about CodeIgniter is how you insert, update, and delete data. It's very simple. Let's say that our post table just has a title and a description. We would have already created the data array in a controller, but let's do that now. As you can see, this is very straightforward. Basically, what you do is you store all of the data that you're going to insert into an array, and you push that into the insert. So all we do is this db insert, and we're putting it into post, and then we're attaching data to that. If you were doing something as a test, you could potentially just create a form that has all the fields as the text names, and you could put post there instead of data. So what we might want to do after we insert the post is we might want to get the post ID after. So what we would do is we would return this db insert ID. Updating a post is pretty similar. So we've made a function called update post. We need the post ID and data. So we're not going to make the data array again because we know how that works. Do this db where, and then after this, we do this db update. So you can see it's very similar. You're just doing your selector and then you're going to update it. Let's look at how we delete something. We do the same selector, and then we do this db delete. So as you're seeing, this is very easy. Let's say you had a really complex query that you're doing multiple joins and ends. You might want to just go ahead and type out the query. What you do is this db query, then you put in the query that you want. So you can see it's very simple. You can still have the flexibility. You can still feel at ease if you're new to CodeIgniter. If you want to type out your queries, you can. And in fact, it's a little bit faster of a load time if you type out the query instead of an active record. In this video, we looked at active record, and we also looked at how to run our own queries within CodeIgniter. Sometimes you want to type out your own query, especially if you have something that's really complex. But the great news is that you have options. You can use as much or as little of CodeIgniter has as you want. If you're a little bit uncomfortable at first, feel free to do some things with queries and some things with active record. In the next video, we're going to jump in more, finish the post model view controller, and then cool things in CodeIgniter.